Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience live Arnold Palmer Invitational Chat. We're going to start in about a minute and a half or so. I just want to let you know a couple things upcoming throughout the course of the week. Thursday, we're going to have a complete NFL free agency recap. Me, Garion, and Cust will be on the line. The crew is reunited to talk some football once again, some baseball strategy. Friday and Saturday over the weekend, the special Golf Cuss Corner next Monday. Then Feinberg and I will return next Tuesday, breaking down the match play, seeing who's in the field. That starts on Wednesday. It's going to be a quick turnaround time. For this week, I do want to let everyone know I'm giving 2 Millie Maker tickets away. If you use the hashtag APIDK on Twitter, tweet me a screenshot of you reviewing this show, the podcast version on this show. So if you subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, leave a review on there. Screenshot it to me again, the hashtag APIDK, and boom, you're in the draw. I got 2 of them to give away. It's a random chance. The best reviews, might get a lean. I don't know, but 5 stars always goes a long way to help. And if you're not subscribed, now's probably a good time to subscribe. Monday show with Feinberg is already up on the podcast and video feed on the DraftKings YouTube page. Plus, my picks cheat sheet is up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. Right now, it's also embedded on all the articles I have up for the Arnold Palmer Invitational on dkplaybook.com. Plus, Mike Leone was on yesterday breaking down the entire DraftKings slate, and it was a long conversation. Hopefully, I learned a lot with it. Hopefully I learned a lot. I did learn a lot with it. Hopefully, you learned it too. So, again, give this show a like, load up your questions, because we're going to get into this. Reid Fowler will be joining me to get to all of your questions. Let's go! Welcome to the live Pat Mayo Experience Arnold Palmer Invitational Breakdown. If you want to let everyone know, if you want to check out my DK cheat sheet, it's up on dkplaybook.com right now, and it's in the description of this video, so you can just hyperlink yourself right there. Same with my betting cheat sheet and one and done cheat sheet of the week. That'll bring you to my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. You got a question? Leave it in the chat. I'll get to it. Just YouTube this week, so there's not going to be a lot of flip-flopping around between YouTube and Facebook. There is an NFL free agency show up on the DraftKings Facebook page starting at 4 p.m. If you get sick of myself and Reid Fowler from DK Live, you can go over there and check that out. What's up, Reid?
A little homage to Patrick Reed and that debacle on 72. So,
well, you got to give him a little bit of credit, because he could have pulled out the wedge and he could have chipped it over, and that would have been nice. And he was, he could have tapped in for par and been on his way, but he went for it. Unfortunately, he did the worst possible job of going for it and cost himself the tournament. But you have to appreciate his aggressiveness, because all day he knew that putt required touch, and he couldn't blast it by the hole or it wasn't going to go in. Unfortunately, he didn't put enough touch on it, so it didn't get up the hill. But all day, he was burning putts by. He was going for every single putt. And that's the only reason that he ended up in contention anyway.
Yeah, that's why, right? We kind of talked about it last week. A guy like Patrick Reed we want to wait till it happens. And when it does, he can really outperform the field. So it was nice to finally see Patrick Reed come through. Now we're just waiting for these other guys like Rory, Spieth, but we'll get to it.
Well, one guy that is not having any problems performing, he happens to be an 8-time winner at Bay Hill and this tournament. That brings us to our first question in the chat about Tiger Woods from TFU72. How much chalk should I be willing to eat, excluding Tiger Woods? So I guess I'll ask you right away. Are you all in or all out on Tiger Woods? Because I'm not going to use any of them, and hopefully it doesn't come back to burn me.
Yeah, it's really hard, because you can't ask anyone who said they saw this coming this early is a complete liar, right? This guy coming in to the season was, let's just see if he can actually play on the weekend and finish. Now we see he's in great form, a 12th place finish, and now a 2nd place. And so for me, I'll be all out, just because at that price and those odds, it's not feasible to see Tiger Woods at this stage winning. But if you want to play him, I feel like you would have to be overweight on a guy like Tiger especially because you're going to eat a lot of that chalk.
Well, see, that's the whole concern for me. I'm not really too concerned that he can't win. I think that he can win this tournament. The fact that he's such an overwhelming favorite in the betting market is probably not quite indicative of his actual odds to win, but he deserves to be inside like the top 10 of favorites this week with the way that he's playing, plus the performance that he always seems to put on at Bay Hill. It's the ownership that really concerns me, and it might get to the point now we're on a Wednesday. I talked about this on Monday. I talked about this on Tuesday, and I've been scanning the interwebs, and it seems like a lot of people are just playing pure fade on Tiger this week. I had initially thought that he'd be in that like 35 to 40% range as it pertained to that like giant $4 GPP. And that still might be the case, but it seems like more and more people are on the purely fade Tiger train. Do you think that he actually comes in lower owned than you expected to start the week?
I mean, Fantasy National has him around, right, their projected ownership at 15%.
I can tell you right now that Tiger breaks any sort of ownership models no matter who you talk to.
Right, exactly. So we could see, I mean, we see this all the time, right? As some of these top guys, usually it comes from an ownership of, well, this guy is so highly priced, and so he has to come within the top 5, or win to really get return on that. So a guy like Tiger, it's hard. If I'm already going back and forth on should I play him or should I not, it doesn't make sense for you to have you sprinkle a couple lineups with Tiger if you feel like that ownership or that the percentage is going to be broken by like 2x of that, right? So let's project out 30%. You better be overweight a guy like Tiger, because if not, then you're just falling back in the field with that ownership. So we could see that. We could see a regression where so many people, and the narrative in the industry is, wow, I just can't make sense of this. We could easily see a guy like Tiger who stats out so nicely here, has a course narrative, has a course history, and all of that coming from all of these old guys, right, winning on the tournament. He has all of that going for him. So the only thing, and you've mentioned this before, is he's got to hit driver. He's got to hit driver on this course, and who knows? That's sort of, the jury is still out on his effectiveness with the big dog. So that's the only reason I'm a little tentative in terms of a stat, and then as a play model, where Tiger's gonna end up.
Mike asks, what do you think that the winning score is going to be this week? It's a very top-heavy field, and if people don't know, this is an invitational, so there's only 120 players in the field as opposed to the regular 132, 134, or 156. This is one of the smallest fields. There's 5 invitationals, the Masters being one of them. That's around like 90-something people, depending on who ends up getting an invite. How many of the old dudes end up wanting to show up? Colonial is another one, Memorial is another one. But in these events, you're going to see a much higher cut percentage because there's far fewer people in the field. So at least 58.3% of the players will play the weekend this week, allowing itself to stars and scrubs. I say at least because, more than 70 people generally do make the cut. So if it's 74, it pushes that number up a little bit. But for the winning score numbers this week, where it is such a top-heavy field, last year it was -11 with Mark Leishman. But if we go back the years before that, Jason Day -17, every 19, every 13, Tiger 13, Party Marty Laird -8, windy year that year, Ernie Els -11, Tiger -5, Tiger -10, VJ Singh -8. So since the redesign a couple of years ago, we've seen the numbers get a little bit up. It was windy throughout the course of the weekend last season. I think that's what ended up keeping the scoring down. There's enough gettable par 5s here. And of course, there's water lurking about. You're going to see some really big numbers from some players. But if people can stay out of danger, I would expect it to be in that like -13 to -16 range. What do you see?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see some of the course history saying, okay, well, it usually plays around that double digit. Even with the hard conditions last year, we still saw Leishman get to that double digit mark. So with the stats that we think that are going to be pertinent here, right? Birdie or better scoring, par 5s, there's 4 par 5s. First time that we're playing a 72 in a while. I think you're going to see a lot of birdies out there, and the guys who can gain birdies or better and get strokes gained in that department are really going to pan out well. So to me, it's more about getting those birdies and that winning score being about 16 to 15, and that's why you look at a guy like Tiger. Is he able now, and even Rory to that point, and Jordan Spieth and these top guys, are they able to put a lot of birdies together? Can they get pars when they need to, right? The first 3 holes are some of the toughest on the course. Can they get par when they have to and then string out some birdies? And so it's going to be a high scoring around that 15 to 16, in my opinion.
Okay, let's go to the next question. This comes from Silas Van Sky. How big is your usual player pool when doing a 20-team max entry? And you can approach this many different ways because everyone has different styles. And if you copy mine, you're probably going to lose because it's me. And that's how I play. And actually, I've had 2 decent weeks of the past 3. The other one, shut out at WGC Mexico. So I always think that it's better off to make harder decisions if you're only going to play 20 lineups. And if you don't take a splattering, don't have like 1 Tiger lineup and like 1 Rose lineup and 1 Stenson lineup. I just either play someone and play them in at least 4 lineups or 5 lineups from the top end, and then have 2 or 3 guys that you play in 8, 9, or 10, that kind of thing. Concentrate that core. I think that's the best way to go. And then when you get down to the bottom or the mid-range, if there's like 4 or 5 mid-range guys that you like. So in like the $8,000 area this week, I only own 3 of the guys. In the $9,000 area, I own 2 of the guys. Above $10,000, I own 3 of the guys. And then from there on down, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger because I want to diversify my risk a little bit. But if you feel the need, like I love James Hahn this week, but I'm not going all in on James Hahn. I believe I have him in 6 of 20 lineups, and that's my most weighted of anyone in the $7,000 range. From down there, I just kind of took a splattering of some sleepers in the upper $6,000 areas like Bryson DeChambeau or even Charlie Hoffman in the low 7s and played them in 2 lineups each. Now, that might be the wrong way to do it. That's how I do it. How do you approach it?
Same way. I mean, it's really personal preference too. It's game strategy and what type of game are you playing as well. I mean, if you're going all cash, you might be less.
No, we're talking about the 20 max entry here. You're not going to build 20 cash lineups.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly right. You want to choose your core to make sure like, hey, these guys at this price range are the ones that I feel that have the most return on investment. Right? You can sprinkle in some balanced lineups, but for this specific tournament and the 20 max, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going core at some guys at the top that I feel like are really going to return top 5, top 10 value, and then I'm sprinkling it out a little bit in terms of that high 7 to 8 range, just because for me, I look at guys that hopefully at that lower 7K range can return some win equity. So when you're doing the 20 max lineup, right, you don't want to say, okay, I'm just going to do like a little Charlie Hoffman here and some Keegan Bradley there. You want a decent core, in my opinion, that you've sprinkled at around 50% of your lineups to feel like, hey, if these guys are going to perform at that level, let's get them in all my lineups, because if I don't have them in one, potentially then I might be out of or if I don't have them in a majority of my lineups, then I might not regain that investment.
Tiger Woods 14 asks, I don't know if it is the Tiger Woods or Tiger's like illegitimate 14th kid. I don't know. But he does ask, who are your one and done picks for the week? I'm using Ricky. Feinberg is using Brian Harman. Reid, who would you pick in a one and done this week?
Oh man, I've been teetering with Stenson and Fleetwood. I'm probably going to lean towards Fleetwood in this sense because I think Stenson is setting up really nicely for Augusta. So that would be my one and done.
Really? Stenson at Augusta, a place where I saw him. I saw him as deep. Someone tweeted me a sheet from, I believe it was the MGM Grand yesterday. He was 100 to 1 to win the Masters. Yeah,
I love it. I mean, give me more. I just want Stenson to do bad, and that's why I'm leaning a little bit more towards Fleetwood, because if you look at Stenson's past, and especially leading up to Augusta, he's been close. Now, he had a miscut here last year. But if you look at some of his past finishes, he plays well around this time of the year. I think it's really setting up nicely for him at Augusta. But I feel like Tommy Fleetwood in this position with the stats that I find that are key here, I'm liking Fleetwood a little bit better.
The next question comes from... Where is it? Kyle asks, why does Lucas Glover pop in my model? Well, I can tell you why. Because Tee to Green, despite a disastrous weekend in terms of approach at the Valspar Championship, generally, Tee to Green, he's excellent. We just know that he can't putt. It's the same reason why Keegan Bradley pops every week and Luke List pops every single week, is because, and you're wondering like, hey, doesn't this guy finish third every single week or win a few turns? Because they can't putt. Lucas Glover actually does have a decent course history here. At least he has some decent finishes here in the past. He's not personally someone that I'm going after, because I'm going after players of sort of the same mold but different names. Do you like Lucas Glover at all?
Not really. I think in my stat model, he's outside the top 50 in terms of the guys that I'm looking at. I think he stats out nicely on par fives. And so if you want to play the par 5 strokes gain angle, he does stat out, I think, in the top 10. But especially at that price where he's at around 75, I think 7,500, there's guys like James Hahn, right, Kevin Chappell, that I feel like they're in more current form and are a little bit better fit in this field. Again, these are pure ball strikers, right, that we haven't seen really get the flat stick going. But, you've talked about earlier, look at a guy like Paul Casey, right? This guy has notoriously been the worst putter when it comes to finishing or just playing in general. And now once he does a 21 putts on Sunday, you know, he gets a victory for the first time in 9 years, whatever it was. So I'm leaning more towards those guys in that price range. Even a guy like Ryan Moore, in my opinion, at that price range are a little bit more appealing to me. So I'm not going to have any shares of Glover.
Eric S. asks about Jason Kokrak. Can you play Jason Kokrak in cash, or am I crazy for thinking that? Well, I wouldn't play Jason Kokrak in cash, but I'm terrible at cash games, so I stopped playing them like 6 months ago. So I just play GPPs now. I would think that with an optimal lineup construction this week for cash games, if I was in that area, Kokrak is a really good option. I prefer Luke List to Kokrak, so that would be my choice. But I think you could drop down into this bottom end of the $7,000 area a little bit more and get around the same amount of safety, whether it's with Chappell, whether it's with Francesco Molinari, even James Hahn. Obviously, I like him a lot more. Keegan Bradley, it's hard to ever say Keegan Bradley is safe, so I won't say that. But he does set up a lot nicer, and he is $800 less expensive, allowing you to pay up for some more of the safe guys, depending on how you want to attack the top end of your roster. You could go like 3 $9,000 guys, and then those 3 guys, and I think that's a pretty adequate cash game roster, and then you wouldn't need to have Jason Kokrak. But on the whole, I don't really have a big problem with it. What do you make of Kokrak?
Yeah, I mean, he has good course history here too as well. But for cash, I think, you know, I'd rather be more in on Luke List around that price, which is hard to say, right? Luke List at cash last year would have been an abysmal strategy, but this guy is playing well. He's a pure ball striker. Again, a guy that you know, can hit the ball. He's shown that he can hang, and when he does putt well or putt, you know, average, he's in the mix. So for cash games, you know, I'm leaning a little bit less on Kokrak and a little bit more on Luke List in that price range. Even if, you know, Cam Smith probably is more of a GPP play, but, you know, I'm a little bit more on List than Kokrak in that area.
Free Time asks, is driving distance favored over accuracy here? I mean, it kind of goes to a yes and no. If you're hitting the ball 400 or 350 yards and you're hitting it into the middle of the water, then that's not going to do you much good. But where birdies and better are so important here, and there are some shorter holes, but like the par 3s are really long. The par 5s are a bit shorter, so the extra distance that you can have to cut off some of that water can actually generate eagle opportunities. There are 5 par 4s that measure between 450 and 500 yards, with another one over 500. So I would lean towards the longer hitters here. I mean, Matt Every is one here, but he has excellent beyond 200-yard proximity with those long irons. The same reason that Stenson always competes here. So there are different ways to attack it, but I think by rule of thumb, driving distance would be a little bit better than driving accuracy. You just can't have wild people off the tee kind of thing. I'll take my Hideki Matsuyama. I can drive the ball straight for 320 yards and stop worrying so much. I mean, I like Bubba as a GPP play, but if the wind picks up, he could be in the middle of the water.
Yeah, I mean, when is distance ever an issue, right? It's always the opposite, where if you don't have enough distance, then that puts you right sort of in the back of the pack. But we've seen a guy like Brian Harmon who, you know, from the eye test, it looks like he can't hit the ball far. Really, he doesn't average a long tee shot, you know, when it comes to driving distance. But we've seen guys here who do well, right? A Zach Johnson, a Luke Donald, some of these guys that a Rod Pampling, for instance, you know, some of these guys who aren't long off the tee who have done well, which goes to the key stats of, right, really coming in with strokes gain approach from proximity with those long irons, right? 30% of all of these approach shots last year came from 200 plus. And even then, right, you're trying to see like, okay, well, who are the guys that have the long iron play that's really coming into form right now? So distance is never bad, but distance with obviously spraying it left and right, that's obviously not a good formula. So
yeah, and to pile onto that, you mentioned with the long proximity in terms of a lot of these approaches, that's why a player like Rose, I mean, Rose has pretty decent driving distance. Scratch him. Henrik Stenson has been able to succeed here over the years. Kevin Kisner last year, just being the ability to hit those long irons really well can help some of the shorter hitters. The longer hitters will have fewer shots from beyond 200 yards. That's just the way that it's going to play out. There'll be 175 and out. So it really depends on where you're comfortable hitting it from. If the shorter hitters are also good with their long irons, then you got a match made in heaven. Other than that, you'd be looking at driving distance. Thomas asks, who is the best pivot off of Kevin Chappell? So I'm looking at fantasynational.com right now. And if you're a member of fantasynational.com, you can check out the ownership projections as well. If you buy a month subscription right now, it'll take you through the Masters and the Heritage too. So you win the money at the Masters, keep playing for the Heritage, win more money. No guarantees on that. You got to make your own picks. There's no picks on the site. It's just information for you to process. But right now, Kevin Chappell listed around 17%, and that's the exact range, along with other chalkier options like Francesco Molinari at 17% as well, Keegan Bradley at 14.3%. So pivots that I like in that region. And you don't need to own a whole lot of people if you're going to go off of Kevin Chappell, but like William McGirt is right there. We got him projected for 2.5%. That's pretty good. He's coming off a real hot Sunday at Valspar last week, so another Florida tournament where he's played well. He was the first-round leader at the Players' Championship last year, another Bermuda grass place. So Florida is a comfortable spot for Dirt McGirt. Other guys, Scott Piercy is going to be in the single digits. Russell Knox is going to be in the single digits. Again, Russell Knox is a shorter hitter that's good with the long irons you can go to. And if you really want to take a chance, Patrick Rogers is $7,300, having projected at 1% ownership. Really kills those long par threes, and we know he has the distance to compete. He's an absolute time bomb when it comes to blowing up from time to time, but if he can get himself through the cut, he's generally a pretty good DraftKings scorer. So those are a few names that I would look to if you want to pivot off Chappell. I myself, not pivoting off Chappell. I'm using Kevin Chappell and pairing him with Jason Day for the most part.
Exactly. I mean, right, we always see it. If any course that fits a Jason or is a Jason Day course, right, we like to play Chappell as that, as coupling those two. But in terms of what you're saying in that price, right, you can go to Keegan Bradley a smaller percentage. And if you're pivoting off of Chappell, I would ask yourself why, right? Is it because of ownership that you look at his projected, right, where we're saying that he's going to be close into the upper high teens? Why would you, if you feel like he's going to play well, a chalk there is not too bad in terms of what he could give you return on. But if you have to, even a guy like Charles, right? Charles Schwartzel is, he's not driving the ball well at all. But guys like this who have shown that they can play with their long irons, that they can, get in the putter stroke going and start gaining strokes there, that's when you can start to see guys in this range, right? You're looking for win equity. You're looking for guys who can do a top 5, top 10, because that's what you need in terms of return at this price. And so those would be a couple of guys that I would go off of if I'm pivoting off of Chappell, but I'm not as well.
Overweight on Ricky and Noren stacks. This is from Tyler. Are there better guys to stack at the top end? So I made a few Jason Day lineups because, like I mentioned, with a larger percentage of players making the cut, I really do like Jason Day this week. So it's hard to stack him with any more of the top guys. So you're going to have to go down to the lower end, maybe the lower $9,000 area. You can pair him with Noren. That actually does work out. I played 3 Rory lineups because I'm such a stupid sucker for Rory that I can't help myself. He is projected to be the lowest owned of those guys, though. I think that Justin Rose will come in less popular than a lot of people think because people, if they find a way to get up to Rose, they'll end up finding a way to get up to Jason Day instead because the popular sentiment is that people like Jason Day a little bit more. But I do really like the Ricky stack. Like I said, he's my one-and-done pick. I like Ricky this week. I like Noren this week a lot. I'm using Fleetwood as a guy to mix in with them, and Hideki I'll also be overweight on. So that's my core near the top, and where those guys aren't the very, very top end outside of Jason Day, who I can't use with them anyway, a lot of combinations of those 4 guys moving forward for me this week.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. I mean, once I click submit on Rory, right, it's a snowball effect where I'm like, yeah, this guy, if Rory was at our projection of 6% or whatever it was last week, what do we think it's going to be this week, right? You have to be in on Rory until he hits, because if he does, you're going to get him at such a low ownership, and his return is going to be so nicely because of that, because he's an elite player. He just hasn't put it all together yet. Obviously, he's bleeding strokes putting, but here he does have a good course track record, or a good record here in terms of how he's played. He's great with his long irons. He's great off the tee. He just hasn't put it all together. But if you want to just to sort of play a contrarian to that, what about peppering the 9,000s, right? If you want to, go with a Hideki, a Noren, a Fleetwood stack, I would be, I wouldn't be so apropos to that as well, because you're looking at trying to get a difference of, okay, if I don't want to take the guys at the top and I want some price relief to not necessarily play in that low 7s, a Hideki, Noren, or even a Stenson, right? A Stenson, in terms of what we're seeing on Fantasy National, Noren is projected to be very, very highly owned. So even a guy like Stenson, if you don't want to play that Noren and you want to go off of that ownership, then I would be okay with a Stenson play as well.
I would much prefer to play Tyrrell Hatton rather than Henrik Stenson. I'm just not buying where Stenson's game's at right now, and maybe I'm the sucker for not buying into the course history. Hatton is playing incredibly well right now, though. I prefer Noren to it, and that gets to the next question from Jeremy B. Hatton, Fleetwood, or Noren? Who finishes higher? I'm going with Noren. Who you got?
I got Fleetwood. I mean, it's my one and done. I can't go. He's got the hair too. He's got the flocks, the flowing locks. So I like Fleetwood there.
Do you reckon that Jason Day will be affected by playing with Tiger? Everyone else so far appears to have been. That was the case for Stenson and Jordan Spieth last week, who both ended up missing the cut. Didn't affect Sam Burns at all at the Honda, who beat Tiger on Sunday. So it didn't affect, I mean, it didn't really affect Brandt Snedeker until Sunday. He matched Tiger with a 4-under round on Saturday, and then he forgot how to putt all of a sudden. But it doesn't worry me at all. Jason Day and Tiger are buddies. They're very familiar with playing with each other, so they played a lot of practice rounds together. Someone actually pointed this out to me, and it actually drew back my Bubba ownership, is Bubba's playing in the group ahead of them going out. And Bubba gets real rattled by everything. He'd be like the worst guy ever to play with Tiger. I don't even know how many rounds they've actually ever played together. But people who want to see Tiger are going to start crowding the holes that Bubba starts going to, and it might throw them all out of whack. So I don't know about that. But I have no concerns about Hideki or Day as it pertains to Tiger. I would be far more concerned that Jason Day sneezes sometime tonight, and like all of a sudden we see a report, oh, he's WD'd with a back injury, or Hideki takes one shot and is like, my wrist, it's still bad, I withdraw. That concerns me way more than actually playing with Tiger.
Yeah, I mean, there is a narrative out there that you've seen, right, the past guys outside of Sam Burns who probably, in terms of what he was doing, how he was playing, these guys might garner some tips from him on how to play with Woods. But don't talk yourself out of a guy who's playing really well and guys who can fit your rosters. I think that narrative is a little overplayed because these guys are elite. And so that's an interesting stat, though, that Bubba is ahead of them. And I was looking at Bubba. If you look at Bubba's recent history here on the even years, he's played extremely well leading up to the Masters. And so looking at Bubba now with that actually, whoever that was, brought up a really good point. But I'm not worried about that.
When it pertains to Bubba, this was the course that people remember he had to withdraw because of allergies a few years ago. Other than that, in his 3 other appearances, he's made the cut every single time. And even last year, when he was god-awful, still managed to have a pretty good week here. So that's why I do have a few shares of Bubba, but that would be the Tiger effect that concerns me, because we saw that at Valspar last week. Tiger, it was really pronounced on Sunday. When Tiger was on the tee with Snedeker, we watched them play the entire hole. They get up there, and then it cuts back to Justin Rose putting the hole behind. There's no one left to watch Justin Rose. So it might be actually nice to play behind him, not the best playing in front of him when people are racing up. Let's get to more questions here. T. Puente asks, no driving accuracy stat. We already went over the accuracy versus distance like 10 minutes ago if you want to rewind or catch it on demand, which you will be able to do if you subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience podcast. Listen to it anytime. You can find that and leave a review, because if you leave a review this week of the audio podcast and tweet me your DK handle with the hashtag APIDK, you can get in the draw for 2 Millionaire Maker tickets for the Masters that I will be giving away. You can do that on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. Just screenshot it and boom, tweet it on over, and you guys are good to go. This one's about the Andercurse. As Ross Fisher points out, the Andercurse is 100% accurate with golf over the last year, so that is true. And Adam Scott is exceptionally Andercurse this week. I did burn a few DK lineups on him, but in full disclosure, when the odds came out, he was 33-1. I bet him right away because he rated it really well for me. Then Tim told me he was going to be his one-and-done pick. I went and auto-cashed out my money on Adam Scott and ended up betting on Noren instead.
Oh man, that's too bad. I mean, Scott was coming in with good form too. It's tough to hear that Scotty's got the Andercurse. But again, if it's sort of a follow-up statement to that, if you're pivoting off of Scott, maybe at that price range or those odds, a guy like Brian Harman is someone that's popping in my stat model as well. But poor Scotty, he's coming into really good form right now.
Chris asks, doesn't Sneds have to win here to get into Augusta? His time is running out after he blew his shot last weekend. He can win here. I expect him to play in Texas 2 weeks from now, so that'll be another opportunity, probably a better opportunity for him to get in here. I just didn't like what I saw Tee to Green last week, and as soon as his putter went cold, he dropped off the face of the earth. Now, normally, you wouldn't expect Snedeker to just be a crappy putter all of a sudden, because on Saturday, he was walking in every 8-footer, and then he missed every 5-footer on Sunday. So I don't know if his game is all the way back, and at this course, where you're going to have to smack a lot of long irons, I'd wait for him for Texas to use them again.
Yeah, and he's, over the last 24, Fantasy National has him at 111th for strokes gained, proximity of that 200 plus. So what you saw last week with that...
In fairness to Brandt Snedeker in that stat, he did play probably 12 of those rounds with a beat-up wrist.
Sure,
last year, like 8 months ago.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, you hit the nail on the head, though. If a guy like Snedeker gains strokes, the short game, short irons, that's where he really excels. And if that is shaky at all, for whatever reason, right, it's going to be tough to go in on Snedeker. Having to win, if he's putting that pressure on himself, which I don't think he is, that's tough, right? Because you have a strong field here. You're coming off of that. I don't think these guys go week to week and say, man, I really shot a 70, I shot a 78 on Sunday, and that's going to bleed over into this tournament. I think these guys are great in terms of their recency bias of not worrying about that kind of stuff. But, I wouldn't play the narrative of he has to win, therefore he's going to play really well. Just because of what we saw, it was bad.
Smiley Kaufman, 1,500 to 1. Any interest?
No. No. Smiley Kaufman hasn't been on, I don't think, on anyone's radar except for Smiley's for a while.
Hey, so, at the Honda, he was on the Waters radar.
Exactly. 1,500 to 1. I mean, yeah, you put 5 bones on there. You could, if for whatever reason he finds something, but no way.
He is a former PGA Tour winner. I want to see some form from Smiley. Maybe make a cut, Smiley, before we start betting you 1,500 to 1 to win a tournament in the stacked field. Let's see here. Free Time says, I hate Luke List chalk. It never works out. And you're right. It never really does work out. But he has been so consistent lately. Tee to Green, one of the best in the field. And it's that short game. He's really improved his short game. The putting, not so much improved. But he's saving himself a lot of strokes. Number 1 in bogey avoidance over the past 24 rounds. So I'm in on Luke List. He's my favorite guy of that $8,000 area. Other people might go with Louis or Kokrak or Jamie Lovemark in the same spot, and all 3 of those guys probably garner lower ownership, but I'm going to stick with my guy Luke List and eat the chalk on that one. What do you think?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when you have to hit driver and then obviously couple that with getting the ball in the hole. I mean, Luke List is a guy who excels with driver. He can obviously hit the ball a mile. We just want to see when he puts it all together, right? Where he struggles, though, like we always talk about, is can he put all these rounds together, and can he have that putter for a full tournament? We saw that. So a guy like Luke List, yeah, in that price range, I do like him as well. I'm not going to be overweight on Luke List. I have some Louis, and I'm going up a little bit with some Brian Harman. But yeah, I'd be totally okay because he is a pure ball striker, and we've seen that this year that he's in great form. So yeah, absolutely.
Vince, longtime viewer of the Pat Mayo Experience, asks how much Matt Every is too much Matt Every for this week.
I mean, he's won here before. A lot. Course history, I mean, too much, 10%. That's where I'm going to potentially be on Matt Every.
What the easy way to do this is? Take the Pat Mayo approach. Don't play him on DraftKings. Bet him first-round leader and hope to get lucky.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to win 3 times, obviously, is a feat at any course, right? You get inherit at any easy course. If you win 3 times, that's a great accomplishment. But too much. I'd be leaning more towards being underweight on Matt Every as opposed to over. So I'd say 10% for me would be too much.
Fitzpatrick is a historically good putter. Do you think that he can pop here? I'm never in on Matthew Fitzpatrick. I will use him at the Masters, so I kind of hope he continues to tank every single week and that his short game just pops up there. But it's not necessarily all his putting. It's his short game that's also really good. And when you look into it, and a lot of these, and it's an eye test thing with Matthew Fitzpatrick because he plays so few rounds that we get to measure on the PGA Tour. When you look at his Euro numbers, a lot of those are putts per round. And the reason that he has a decreased putts per round historically is because he's so good around the green. So I'm out on Matthew Fitzpatrick this week, and I'll be in at the Masters. And like I said, I hope he misses the cut on every event until then.
Yeah, I mean, Fitzpatrick, he's got talent, right? And where I want to see him perform too is the par threes. His putting is fantastic. I mean, I think he's in the top 20 in terms of strokes gained putting. But where I want to see him, especially on this course, is those long irons and that par three scoring. And he doesn't stat up very well for me, so I'm not going to have any ownership on Fitzpatrick either.
Let's see. These are just comments. Best guess Tiger ownership in the $8 GPP. Also, would you play Tiger in a single entry? Does that theory change? I probably wouldn't just because I like the guys around Tiger a little bit more. But my guess is going to be 32% in the $8 GPP.
Yeah, I mean, that's not far off. I mean, if you aggregate all of the models potentially out there and all the data, it's still coming around that 20, right, the 25%. Now, is there an inflation of, right, Tiger on what we see, what the industry talks about? Then yeah, I mean, you could easily see that ownership being in the 30 percentile range. So for single, no, there's guys around there that I'd rather play as well. But even in that $8 GPP, right, it's the same thing, right? There's guys around that price range that I'd rather play.
Max C asked, favorite play in the $6,000 area. For me, strangely enough, and this is always like, you always like to bounce back when it comes to a lot of these things. How about someone bouncing back from a withdraw and being Anderkirch last week? No mention anymore. Bryson DeChambeau scoring on par fives. Can't really putt, but he is hitting those long irons really well. He'll keep it in the middle of the fairway. Like Bryson here, he is my most owned player in the $6,000 area. But listen, this is going to be a risky week for me. I have a lot of Luke List. I'm playing Hideki coming off a wrist injury, and I'm playing Bryson DeChambeau coming off a WD. Sounds like why I'm bad at this, but I do kind of like how Bryson sets up here, and I know no one's going to use him. Other than that, the other names that I would consider from the $6,000 area, I like Hollywood Hoagie as a flyer, and he's the min price, only because I know he's probably going to score on these par fives really well. He could end up making 8 bogeys in a row and just take himself out of the tournament, but I do like him just a little bit. The other ones that I have little pieces of down here, like I said, I like to distribute the wealth a little bit. Pure Communist Manifesto. I'm the Karl Marx of the $6,000 area. I got to spread it around. I always spread my risk around a little bit. I have a bit of Sung Kang, who I think is a decent sleeper here. Brendan Harkins, who will be a bit chalkier, but only like 5% owned. I mean, I'm playing Hao Tong. How can you not play Hao Tong? That sounds like a DFL just in the making. And the other guy is Scott Brown, because I like Scott Brown. Yeah. And when you're the first round leader in every tournament, you're probably going to make the cut.
What about your boy with the Nature Boy treatment, Siwoo? There's no Siwoo on this?
I don't play Siwoo on DraftKings. I bet Siwoo every week.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I actually like Curtis Luck a little bit in this range. Yes,
you would like some loser with a man bun, wouldn't you? I'm surprised you don't have a man bun.
It's just I don't have the commitment to get a man bun. It's like this is hard enough. I'm just gonna shave it off and do the Pat Mayo treatment and just make it easier for me to
make yourself aerodynamic.
Well, that's what I'm saying, man. You learn more on the Pat Mayo experience than anywhere else, but I like Curtis Luck here. At 6,800, what are you looking for, right? You're looking for win equity. Now, I'm not saying he's coming out, and I'm not giving him the Sharma treatment and say he's going to win. But I like where he's coming from because he has experience winning. He obviously won the 2016 Am Open, and he's getting to a point now where we're seeing that he has some exposure to what it is to play on the professional tour. He's on the web.com. He's not on obviously the PGA, but at this range, I'm going to have some exposure to Curtis Luck.
And don't forget about Johnny Question Marks, too. I know he burned everyone by missing the cut on the number last week. You can go back to Johnny Question Marks here if you really want to. Instead of Curtis Luck, one of the other really cheap guys, because, I mean, there's a lot of Sam Burns questions coming in as well. Thoughts on Sam Burns? Thoughts! All caps. So just calm down just a little bit on Sam Burns, all right? Sam Burns is putting the lights out right now. He is gaining a ton of greens in regulation, which is very important here. I just feel like he's someone that's going to end up being, I don't want to say chalky because he's not going to be chalky, but I can see his ownership hitting double digits. I'd rather drop down $100. And you talk about Curtis Luck playing on the Web.com tour. He's had some success. He was the 2016 Amateur of this year. I'm going to go with Sam Horsfeld, who has 2 top 5s in his last 4 Euro starts. He's coming over for the first time. He's a Brit, but grew up in Orlando, played at the University of Florida. No one is going to use him. He's a boomer bust type guy. Don't use him in a cash game type of thing, but with a 2nd place finish and a 4th place finish coupled in with a few missed cuts as well. So he is incredibly boomer bust, but he's used to these Bermuda greens. So I do like him here. That is one of those guys, the 21 and under guys that I would use over Burns, over Luck. I'll go with Horsfeld.
Yeah, even a guy we just saw there, JB Holmes, right? I mean, if he can't keep the ball out of the water, please, JB, keep the ball out of the water. He's another guy at that price range that I really like. So, you know, again, Sam Burns is the recency. He'll probably be the recency chalk. And at that price, you're like, geez, I mean, he's putting the lights out, like you were saying, birdie or better. He's doing really well at that, you know, in that stat model. But even a guy like Kevin Kisner comes in here over the past 24 as number 1 strokes gained putting. I mean, that, again, his current form is complete garbage. So,
well, shouldn't that lead you to believe that if he's number 1 in strokes gained putting and he's still putting up crap results, that he's probably not very good right now?
But, like, what do you want from this range, right? I keep on going back, and we always talk about it. At this range, you want win equity. You want guys who can potentially recall what it's like to do well.
Listen, the reason that Kisner played so well last season coming in here is that if you looked at birdie or better percentage from beyond 200 yards, he was inside the top 5. He is nowhere near that. He's in the triple digits this year with his long irons. He's just not playing as well as he was last year in trending coming in. Can he recapture the magic? Sure. I have no reason to believe that's going to happen, though.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you're talking about a guy who, you know, recency, like, it's just everyone's off of him. So again, at this price range, what are you trying to accomplish, right? You're trying to accomplish some sort of narrative that says, okay, I'm going to play this guy, because most of these guys down here don't necessarily have that. Kisner and JB Holmes are guys that just, you know, you just maybe just a little bit, just a little ownership with those guys.
Eric says, thoughts on Jason Day in a 1 and done? I like Jason Day. He's probably if I were setting the odds, now let's throw out the fact that I want to get people to bet on the odds. If I was just setting out probabilities to win, Jason Day would probably be the highest for me. So I would think that's a pretty good 1 and done if you're going to go with it. I do think that he'll probably be either the most picked player or the 2nd most picked player after Tiger. Although a lot of people might use Chappell too. But if you're going to use Chappell, you might as well use Jason Day instead. Adam says, no need to pivot off of Chappell. I agree. Bryce asks, talk about Molinari, please. Shorter hitter, but I like him better than Keegan Bradley. Well, he's a better player than Keegan Bradley, so that would help. Although Keegan Bradley top 5 in this field and tee to green over his past 24 rounds and 50 rounds as well. So it's, you know, tee to green, we know about Keegan. Keegan has a 2nd place finish here before Molinari. Far more likely to make the cut, a far more consistent player. I prefer Keegan Bradley to Francesco Molinari. I think both are capable plays. If you want a floor, Molinari's probably the guy. If you want upside, I'd rather take Keegan Bradley.
Yeah, I mean, Molinari he's a guy that always stats out so nicely in these data models. But, you know, if you're playing at that price range, right, of 73, I think there's guys that I like a little bit better. Molinari does also have good, decent course history here as well. So I'm with you. I'm liking Keegan a little bit more because of the current form. But I wouldn't mind if you want to pivot off of that to go Molinari. But I think their ownership is probably going to be around the same in that, 10 to 12 or 10 to 15% ownership at that range.
Free Time asks about Chesson Hadley, our friend Chesson Hadley. Thoughts on him? I'm going to fade him this week. I know that if he can just learn how to chip, because when you go look at his numbers, he's not striking the ball as well as he was when he was going on his top 10 run from earlier in the season. And if you look at models that kind of weight 24 rounds or 36 rounds, he's still going to pop in those numbers because he played so incredibly well. It's kind of shocking he didn't win at some point on the West Coast. But over his past 3 tournaments, he's a sieve around the greens. He can't chip. And around the green play here isn't the most important thing in the world, but if you miss okay, put it this way. If you miss a green here, you could be in A, the water, or B, you're in a whole lot of trouble because the rough is very thick. I just don't see him contending unless he strikes the ball at the rate he was 2.5 months ago, and he's just not showing that he can do that right now. So no thanks for Chesson for me. Now that I've said that, it's probably finally his week because I kept reinvesting and he kept sucking.
But I mean, he probably burned a bunch because I was on Chesson Hadley as well. I mean, after sort of the Ander curse and then coming off of that to say, hey, look, this guy is still playing well. Maybe it was just an anomaly that you saw him, lose a ton of strokes around the green. But if you look at his stats in the past 3 or 4 tournaments, I mean, his around the greens, he lost 6 at the Honda, 3.5 at the Valspar. I mean, like you said, he was a sieve when it came to just playing golf. He couldn't put around together. So although he stats out nicely, right, take that with a grain of salt, because like you were saying, if you go over the past 24, it includes tournaments that he was playing well in. It's just currently right now.
Ashley asks, is it worth backing Day for the Masters at 14-1 right now? He'll surely play well this week. Let's not throw out he'll surely play well. No one's a guaranteed lock to do anything. I do have a lot of faith in Jason Day, as does the pricing system, because he's the most expensive guy. It depends on how you want to play your betting card. I mean, if you bet Jason Day at 14-1, then all of a sudden you don't have a whole lot of room to take some shots down the list if that's something you like to do. If you're someone who likes to target favorites, I do think that Jason Day at 14-1 is I don't want to say it's a nice value, but I think it's appropriate for what his actual odds are to be to win the tournament. If you can tell me I can bet Tiger at 10-1 or Jason Day at 14-1, I'll bet Jason Day at 14-1. Although, you might as well just bet Jason Day this week because he's dropped down to 13-1 in a far less extravagant field at a course where he's already won at. So you're just better off betting Jason Day this week.
Right, exactly. If you're going with those top guys, right, there's no real wiggle room to go down to where we see some guys like Noren and Fleetwood in those 20-1 ranges, 25-1. Stenson's also there. So yeah, there's no reason why you would be off on Day because of those odds, but it's really up to you, right? It's up to how you play. For me, I'd rather go a little bit further down, right, with a guy like Hideki and Fleetwood in that range, that 20-25 to 1 odds, as opposed to going up. But we could all easily see Jason Day winning this tournament because of his course history, because he sets up so nicely here with those long irons. He hits the ball great off the tee, and he's putting well. So yeah, of course.
And the way that I like to look at it in terms of odds, and this is coming from a guy who's hit 0 winners this year, so I know, people, I know how to do this. But mathematically thinking about it, if Jason Day is 12-1 to win this tournament, and you do like, let's say, Alex Noren and Hideki Matsuyama, both those guys are more than double the odds of Jason Day. So to get the same amount of return, you could have both those guys instead of Jason Day, or just bet Jason Day. I'd rather have those two guys. That would be the way that I would look at it, at least from a how you divvy up your money perspective.
Right, exactly. If you're coming in with a certain amount of money saying, okay, I want to diversify the same way you diversify like on DraftKings, right? You're looking at, okay, at this price, is he going to return value? Same thing. If you like a guy at 50-1, right, every 50 tournaments he's going to win one time, yeah, of course, that's why the value is there. Again, I'm the same camp as you. I'd rather diversify and get more bang for my buck with guys who really are in great form as opposed to just putting all my eggs in one basket.
Kyle asks, is Chris Kirk a sneaky play? I don't think he's as sneaky as you might think he is. People are using him. So far this week, got him around 6 to 8% in terms of ownership. Eric asks, where do you get your 6-6 stats from DK after Friday's round? I follow @CutSweats. Shout out Nelson Adcock, who runs the account. He has all the stuff up there. It's not me like going by hand. I just look at his site, and it tells you for each of the tournaments that you're in. I think Fantasy Labs also has something very similar to that as well. They also have the immediate ownerships if you want to go grab those. Let's see some more questions here. Let's see. Would you rather play Kevin Kisner or Charlie Hoffman this week? I would rather play Charlie Hoffman this week. You?
I think I'm going to stick with my boy Kisner. Like I said, I'm probably going to be doing that. I'm probably going to be shaking my head and saying that was the stupidest call I've made all today. But I think there's a certain narrative that you can see Kisner playing well. Again, at this price range, you're looking at that same, right, like, does he have win equity? And Charlie Hoffman, again, is a guy who does play well around this time. The Masters is a tournament that he obviously does well at. But I like Kisner this week, especially in terms of his ownership. So I'm going to be on Kisner.
LIJ Productions asked, does Harkins have any chance at a top 10 this week? I think that he does. He's actually been playing quite well. Not really a bet for me. I bet Hoagie top 10 instead because I enjoy burning my money. But listen, if you want to go for it, go for it. Do you like Harkins at all? Because I am using him in a few lineups.
I liked him more last week than I did this week. But yeah, Hollywood Hoagie is a guy that also stats out really nicely in my model. But I'm off on Harkins this week, just because he did well. He did well last week in terms of where you got him at, where he finished. But I'm going to be off on him this week.
Let's see. Oh, Ollie week. We'll see about Ollie week. Let's see. Wes asks, can we count on Mark Leishman this week, the defending champion? I don't think you can count on him because every time that we try to count on Mark Leishman, he screws us. Especially at the Genesis, the putter just hasn't been there. I would expect that to flip around at some point, but it's not like he's striking his irons as good as he was, at least even coming in last year when a lot of people were on him at 80 and 100 to 1, and he was bottom of the $7,000 range on DraftKings. He's gonna not necessarily fall by the wayside because he'll garner enough attention being the defending champion. I just happen to like enough people around him more that I have none of him here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in that same boat as well. I'd be interested to see, because in January, this guy was a Masters darling, right? Everyone was on Leishman earlier in the season to say, like, this guy is going to be, is going to do well at Augusta. Do we know what his odds are now at Augusta?
Who?
What they were back at Leishman?
Yeah, Leishman's down to 50 to 1 at the Masters. He opened at 35 to 1 in January. Right.
So I think there's there's a narrative out there, and there's a case that you can make for Leishman at Augusta. But at the same time, we haven't seen it, right? We haven't seen currently, and every time we've used a guy like Leishman where he has the skill set to play well here, I'd rather go, like you said, around those, around where he's at with Brian Harman and some other guys in that price range. So I'm going to be off on Leishman.
What do you make of Byung Hun An this week? I'm off of him. I think that you can get the exact same player for $500 cheaper.
Yeah, I'm not on either. It's just because we haven't seen it yet, and it's tough to play on. I mean, yes, he passes the eye test. He can hit the ball, mile off the tee. But I'd rather go, like you were saying. Cam Smith is someone that I'm interested in. Ryan Moore is someone also that I like a little bit more at this course. He's coming into.
Well, I'll throw on Chris's question here too. He says, is Stallings worth a look this week? Who's in exactly that same area? Bad history, but stats popping. I can't do it, but I see it. I see the stats jumping out to me, and I see him continuing to play well. I just don't know what to make of Scott Stallings. I can't. He must be back on steroids again. People don't know he was like the one guy ever on the PGA Tour busted for the juice and got suspended. But now that he's back, he seems to be playing well. Generally, after the West Coast, you just get off of Scott Stallings, but he seems to be okay. I'm not using him, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Moore for me is, like I said, in that price range. He's top 10 in the par 3, that 200 to 225, right? Proximity around 200 plus. He's playing well in those areas. So I'm liking him a little bit more at that price range. And he's going to be one of my core players actually coming into this tournament.
Game Theory says, y'all ain't gone win shit. Good luck paying the rake, though. That's just a tremendous use of the English language and your time. Congratulations on being a real cool dude. Let's see here. Any Hatton insight? Like Hatton, like Fleetwood more, like Noren more, and I would drop down and pay a little bit less for Bubba because he'll be less owned. That's my take on Hatton. I think he's just as capable as those other guys. Like I've said, I've already liked him more than I like Stenson and Adam Scott because he's not severely injury-cursed.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Fleetwood, and then I'm going to go a little bit more Noren and Stenson. Out of those Euro players, right, that range, I'm liking Hatton the least, but it doesn't mean that I don't think he's going to play well here. I just think those other guys, in where they're playing and what I'm using in terms of my key stats, I like those guys a little bit better than Hatton. But you're getting Hatton at that decreased price, right, 500 off of Fleetwood, and that gives you leverage to go somewhere else. But I'd rather go with a guy like Fleetwood and the other guys over Hatton.
Any Sean O'Hare love for you? None for me.
No love.
All right. We already did Chris Kirk. How do you think that Bo Hostler plays this week? I have really no opinions on Bo Hostler. You'd be surprised that even in a field of 120 guys, I don't have like a concrete opinion on every single guy. I have no interest in Bo Hostler. I didn't even look him up.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same camp. I mean, again, there's guys obviously in his price range that we like, but yeah, I'm not in on Bo Hostler either.
Let's see, anything else? Does Noren's proximity from 200 yards plus scare you at all? I mean, it's a concern, but he is such a different player right now. And one of the things that you have to understand with these stats is how many shots from over 200 yards has he been taking? And you see him at a lot of these courses where he's been scoring on par fives really well, so it shows me that he's playing the longer holes really well. So I don't have too big of a concern for something about that, like Alex Noren right now, when you're scoring on the par fives and the par fours like he's been doing and just being top 10 over the past 24 rounds and birdie or better overall, that I think he can hit it far enough that he'll be fine here. So that doesn't concern me. You?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same, right? If we look at strokes gained around the green, right? Some of these stat models you have to take with a grain of salt because these guys aren't going to gain strokes if they're already hitting greens in regulation around the green. So again, take it with a grain of salt. But where you want to look at are some of these stats that no matter what course or how they're playing, right? Everyone has an approach shot, right? Everyone has strokes gained putting, tee to green. So those are the stats that I'd be looking in, and Noren stats out very nicely across the board in some of the key stats that are consistent throughout any course, right? Strokes gained approach, I think he's top 25, and if you look at other ones in terms of strokes gained par 3 at that range, he's doing really well. So that's where I like Noren as opposed to looking solely at, okay, 200 plus. Yes, it's an important statistic, but it's not the only one, and you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Richard Whitehouse asks, Kiradech, Epi Barnrat, 200-1 for the Masters right now. Am I mad? Or is that attractive? I actually saw that number floating around a few weeks ago. People tweeted about it. By the time I got around to go make that bet myself, it no longer existed. So on my books, it's like 100-1, which I don't love. I don't think that Kiradech is going to win the Masters. However, at that value, almost the same reason that I have a 150-1 bet in on Pat Perez, if you can get him around the leaderboard come Sunday and you have access to live betting, then all of a sudden that 200-1 is very, very valuable. So I would hit it. I would hit the 200-1. If that number was out there for me, I'd take it.
Yeah, he's playing well. I mean, maybe not obviously for this tournament. He's doing a lot of traveling, but at the Masters, even getting a top 5 or top 10, Kiradech is playing well. He's hitting the ball fantastic. So yeah, I would pounce on that if you see that value's out there.
Jonathan Doyle asks, what's more important stat to win at Bay Hill, par 3, par 4, or par 5 scoring? It's par 5 scoring.
Ooh, I'd probably go par 3.
No,
I think par 5.
What do you mean par 3? I mean, the least projectable holes in golf. Yeah, let's take those.
I just think that's where, yes, you can score, right? That's where you can score the most par 3 or par 5s. But where I think, where I'm seeing a lot of guys that I'm rostering is their aptitude on par 3. So yes, I can see the argument, but I'm going par 3s.
Eric asked, Pat, what place does Jason Day need to get if he doesn't win to cover his price? Well, that depends on how he scores for one thing, because the DraftKings scoring could be off from where you actually finish. So a top 5 you would basically need from him, but it also depends on what Justin Rose does, what Rory McIlroy does. If those guys, along with Tiger and Ricky Fowler, all come like T50 and Jason Day comes T8, well, then he was by far the better play of all of them. So it's really dependent both based on price. You would obviously prefer a top 3, a top 5 would still be about break even, but then again, you have to weigh it against who you would have used that money on instead. It's not like you're sitting around leaving $6,000 on the table. So right. You're going to end up taking one of or two of the top 10 guys anyway. If it's Jason Day, you have to compare it to A, where he finishes against the field, and B, where he finishes against those top 10 guys or even top 5 guys. Thoughts on Mo Ikara of the sub 21-year-old guys? He's my least favorite. Mo Ikara, if you don't know, he's 20 years old. He plays at Cal. I prefer Horsfield better. I prefer actually your boy Curtis Luck and Sam Burns a lot better to him this week. You?
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. I'd rather go other places, especially with the man bun. I mean, the man bun has to give you an increase of ownership. But no, in all seriousness, the Curtis Luck is a guy that I'm more on than this week.
All right, we're going to go for another 5 minutes. So if you do have a question, load it into the YouTube chat right now, and Reid and I will get to it. Let's see. Streelman for a bounce back. Leone brought this up to me on Tuesday's show, and I wasn't even really thinking of Streelman after loving him so much last week, but I'm in. I have two shares out of 20 lineups with Kevin Streelman in them just to see if the bounce back is there, because there's a reason I liked him so much going into last week. The tee to green game, those long irons, the par 3 scoring, your favorite stat. He's great at all those those things. So just one bad week does not a career make. So I'm going to have a little bit of shares of Streelman, and no one's going to own him. So that's way overweight to the field.
Yeah, top 10 in ball striking and tee to green. Fantastic, right? He had a couple bad rounds. And so a lot of people are going to be like, well, I mean, no way, we're not going to choose this guy. But, right, in your favorite stat, par 5 scoring, he's top 25 as well. So, and he's got good course history. So I like Streelman at that price, especially at that ownership. You're going to get him at a pretty low ownership share.
Let's see here. I had it. Now the chat scrolled on me. David asks, who has to play well to get into the Masters? Well, Brandt Snedeker is one of those guys. He's obviously the big one. I might be a bit off on this because I forget who's won and who hasn't over the past year, but looking at it right now, it looks like, let's see here, James Hahn. He did not win over the course of last season, so he needs a win to get in. Peter Uihlein needs a win to get in. Ian Poulter is playing for his Masters life this week. Kevin Na looks like he is going to need to compete just a little bit to get into the Masters. Keegan Bradley, I'm not sure if he's still on his membership or not. I don't think he is, so he would need a good week. Obviously, Snedeker, who I mentioned before, Luke List is playing for a Masters invite. Chesson Hadley, Ryan Moore, although he may have come inside the top 10 either last year. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, so he might have his automatic invite back. I wish I had a list in front of me that would really help, but I tried Googling it. I couldn't find it. Grillo is another one because someone just asked, playing catch up on the show right now, have you talked about Chappell, Grillo, and ZJ? We talked a lot about Chappell. We didn't really touch on Grillo so much. He's coming back from India this week after leading after 36 holes at the Indian Hero Open. I don't really like Grillo this week. I understand the case for him, but that travel with being a hothead, I don't like it. Are you taking any Emiliano?
A little bit, just because if I'm trying to play the contrarian, if any, to James Hahn and some of these guys that I thought, even in that price range, like a Ryan Moore, to have just some diversity. I have some Grillo. He does stat out nicely, but not too much. But a guy going back to Ryan Moore, last year he came in 9th at the Masters. So
he's in.
So he's in, yeah. And he finished 34th last year at the Arnold Palmer. So again, that's someone that I like. But yeah, in terms of Grillo, I'll have some shares if I want to play like contrarian.
ZJ, do you like Zach Johnson at all?
Yeah, yes.
I'm out.
Yeah, I can see a little bit, but not too much. Just because, I like his approach game. I think we're seeing that, strokes gain approach from where it was last year to this year. It's really increased in terms of where he is in the field, but not too much. Not too much.
Someone says, should you play Sam Saunders at sub 1% ownership? I don't know where you think Sam Saunders is coming in with sub 1% ownership. Arnold Palmer is his grandfather. Of course he's going to play well here. I'm just betting Sam Saunders first round leader and leaving it at that. He's not touching my lineups.
Yeah, same way. 1%. I want to play on that. No, yeah, Sam Saunders is a guy at that price range who's going to be chalk. And again, chalk at that price range, we see him at probably 10% ownership. But yeah, he's not making it in my lineups either.
Oh, Brian, you don't know who's Andrew Curse this week? You got to follow Tim on Twitter at TimAnderson87. It's Adam Scott, by the way. Let's see. Pat, who is your favorite projected low-owned player? That's also from Brian. I'll mix that in with free time. Kyle Stanley. Your thoughts on him? He's one of my favorite low-owned GPP plays this week. I was all about him last week going into Valspar. He WD'd before it started, just didn't want to play, but he was hot with his irons at WGC Mexico. So I think that if he can continue his ball striking, we talk about really good ball strikers. If I'm going to target a guy like Keegan Bradley or Luke List, guys that are supreme ball strikers yet can't putt, I think you got to throw Kyle Stanley on that list too.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Ryan Moore. I think he's not going to be highly owned, especially in that price range where you see Hahn and even going out a little bit where you see Chappell. But for me, it's going to be Ryan Moore. I just like where his game's at right now.
Eric asked, do you look back at past performances in recent form as a pattern to recognize and find players? Listen, you're overthinking this.
Yeah.
You really are. Like if you're gonna start looking for like random patterns of how guys finish to peak at a certain performance, I don't know. It's like the people who play roulette and they're like, oh, by my 5x5 grid, it says that red's gonna hit this time. It's like, well, what if you made a 6x6 grid? Like, well, I didn't. I made a 5x5. It's like the Spinal Tap, but these go to 11.
Exactly.
Like you can look at whatever you want and find whatever pattern you want. Eventually, you get stuck in paralysis by analysis. And I think that even I do that far too much anyway by digging too much into the stats and not trusting my gut enough sometimes, because this is golf. It's random. You have to accept that there's a part of variance, a part of randomness. And like you mentioned with Kevin Kisner, I just don't see it because I don't like the way that he's been playing right now. But if he ended up inside the top 5, he's Kevin Kisner. I know he's a good player. He just seems super cold right now. So it wouldn't stun me. It's just something that I'm not going with here. So listen, you can pick and choose anything you want to make a case or against anyone in golf. It's incredible how well you can do that for everything. So you have to go with your gut here. Listen, if you want to play random patterns, play random patterns.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely variant. That's why it's so interesting, and that's why we can talk about these guys who really, you know, at the low salary range should really, you know, not have a case of potentially playing well. But there is a narrative out there. So even going back to that specific question, you know, even take into account, okay, yes, there are narratives like, you know, with Sam Saunders being Arnold Palmer's grandfather with course history, but also take into account what's happened with the course, right? It's been redesigned. There are different things. And so course history is not necessarily everything. But like you said, Pat, you can make a case and you can theorize and analyze everything to a T, where at some point you got to make a decision. You got to go with your gut. And you got to be okay with being completely wrong, because if you've watched this show, there are a lot of, you know, things that we get right. There's a lot of things that we get wrong, because you're looking at, and we're making our cases as well with different stat models and different narratives that we have in our mind. But pull the trigger. If you like a guy like his, like I do, which really the stat model says you shouldn't, then pull the trigger, because if you're on, then you're going to be in the money.
Free time asked Schwartzel a good pivot this week. I don't think he's bad. We already talked about that. Los Fids. That's a weird name. It just looks like someone smashed the keyboard. Why so much love for Jamie Lovemark this week? I can tell you why. I'm not personally on Lovemark, although I do love me some Jamie Lovemark. And I'm not going to be on him the week he finally wins after 3 years of betting the guy. But A is course history. A 6th and a 23rd in 2 career appearances here. He has 2 consecutive top 20s, 4 consecutive cuts made, and he's just dominating around the greens and through approach shots. The only place on the course recently over his past 5 tournaments where he is losing strokes is off the tee. And some of that might have to do with he can bomb the ball really well, and he's played the Valspar and he's played the Honda, 2 courses that have a ton of water, and you have to dial back a little bit. When you get this guy free rein with his driver, he can pound it out there like no other. So I think that in an ideal world, if Lovemark plays up to his ability, then he's someone that could win this tournament. And I think that's why people like him.
Yeah, Lovemark at that 8,000. If he was a couple $100 less, I think he'd be a popular play. I think for me in my roster, is 8,000 is a little bit, especially in that price range, and especially lower than where Lovemark is. I think there's more value. But you're right, he's a guy that can hit the ball fantastic. He's sort of the hipster play too, right? Everyone loves some Lovemark because when he plays well, right, he stats up really nicely in terms of getting DraftKings points. Where he's also losing quite a bit of strokes on the green. So strokes gained putting here is not necessarily the paramount key stat, but if you can't hit the, you know, if you can't get the ball in the hole, then it's going to be a tough go. So I'm a little bit off.
I guess so. But the one thing I will say about his putting, that it's switched since they've gone to Florida. Once he's got on Bermuda grass, he has 2 consecutive events of at least 1.3 strokes putting. So he gained strokes last week on the greens at Valspar. He gained some of the most in the field at the Honda. So it seems like he is despite being a California guy and historically putting a lot better on POA, it seems like this year that Bermuda greens really tickle his fancy. So I wouldn't be too concerned about how he putts this week as it pertains to being really good or really poorly. I think he'll be right around average if the rest of his tee to green game can keep up with it is. But he has love this week, but it's not as much as you'd think. So he's going to be in double digits in terms of ownership most likely, but at that same price point, Jason Kokrak is projected to be higher owned, Luke List is projected to be higher owned, and Louis Oosthuizen is projected to be higher owned as well. So while he might be like 11%, he'll be the least owned of those 4 guys right around there. And then if you look around it, like Snedeker's not going to be super highly owned, Kiradesh, they're on that level below as it pertains to Jamie Lovemark. So I think he's capable to use. Again, I just like Luke List more.
Yep.
See, last one. No reason to jump off the Cam Smith train when they're putting on Bermuda. I'm overweight on him this week. I, too, am overweight on Cam Smith because I love Cam Smith. I have an addiction. I just take Cam Smith and hook it into my veins, and I'm good for a while. And then I'm going to watch him, like, fall away on Sunday and not win. But if he can get himself into contention here, I think that he's a very good skill set. Long irons, good short game, scores on par 3s. That's what you want.
Yeah, exactly. I like Cam Smith a lot as well. I mean, he sets up nicely. He's sort of the, the Jamie Love mark of last year, for instance. No, Cam Smith is playing really well. And so, I have, probably 20 to 25% of my lineups with Cam Smith because he sets up really nicely and he gains strokes on those par threes. And so I'm all about that.
All right, that will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience Arnold Palmer Invitational live question and answer. If you are just tuning in now, want to catch the replay, you can download the podcast later on or just watch it on the DraftKings YouTube page. Submit a review of the audio podcast. Send me a screenshot along with your DK handle on Twitter and use the hashtag APIDK to enter the draw for some free Masters Millionaire Maker tickets. I got 2 to give away for this draw, so let's see if we can get into it. Also, follow Reid on Twitter. Reid, where can they find you?
Yeah, so DK Playbook, DK Live. There's a lot of stuff that we do during the week for the course, like course previews. Things are going to be ramping up, obviously, for Augusta. So you can find me on DraftKings on all the platforms and follow me on Twitter at Reid Fowler.
All right, you can follow me at the PME on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. My picks cheat sheet up on my Facebook page right now. The rest of my content up either on the audio feed, the video feed, or on DK Playbook, where I have a full field breakdown, why I like the stats that I like this week, and a couple of guys I picked on Monday that, frankly, I don't really care about anymore. You want to check on later in the week for the actual finalized picks. That's usually how I end up leaning. When I submit something at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, don't have all the information yet, just my initial thoughts of what's going on. The field and the course preview, though, that's quality stuff. So thank you for watching. Really enjoy doing these chats. None next week for the match play, and none the week after for Texas because I'll be filming my Millionaire Maker DraftKings Masters show. We'll have live shows all week during the Masters. So thank you for watching. Sub to the vid, sub to the pod, and that'll do it. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.